Well, that's our cue. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, if you've not put your name and contact information into the chat, if you'll just do that, that again just gets us to know who we are on the call, who everybody is, and that we can reach out to each other on that. Welcome to the IDRPP's Autism Echo. We're really glad to have you here. We are recording today's session. We do that for educational and quality improvement. It also is stored on our Canvas page as well as our YouTube channel, so you are free to go back and review this, share the link with your colleagues, and use it for whatever purpose that you would like to use it for. I just do this every time because it's just a huge shout out. I'm so thankful for the Autism Council of Utah and the Autism License Plate for providing funding for this project. It's been a really great project and support for us all to learn a little bit more about autism. So a huge shout out to them. If you've never joined an Echo session, welcome to your first Echo session. We hope that you continue to come to these. They're a great way to, again, build some professional networking, know everybody who is on the call that is out there doing the same work that we're all doing, and not feel as isolated. We also will have a speaker, so a subject matter expert who will talk to us about a specific topic. And then we have my favorite part, which is the case presentation in small breakout groups. I love to hear all of the amazing ideas from everybody on the call. Gives me some new ideas of what to use with the families, as well as to hear other resources that I may not be aware of. So don't jump off and stay on for those case presentations and breakout room discussions. We love interacting. If we were all sitting in a conference room together, we'd be chit-chatting and having those conversations. So please put your comments into chat, put your questions into chat. Colin Kingsbury, one of our hub members, monitors that for us. So he will make sure that those questions get answered and that we just have those conversations. Again, case narratives are a great way to learn from everybody on this call. So if you are ever interested, you have a case that you're stuck on, or you just want to get some new ideas about a case, please consider submitting a case and we will get you on the schedule for that. As we are talking, we do talk about the families that we work with or the clients that we serve. So just remember to protect their individual privacy. If you are unsure of what that means, you can reach out to one of our great hub members. They all have an asterisk in front of their names, so they are easier to find in chat. Renaming your profile and raising your hand. Just a quick reminder of how to do that. But again, if you have any questions, please you can reach out to me via chat or any of the hub members, and we'll help you know how to do that. In order to get a certificate, we do ask that you complete our survey. Again, a huge shout out to everybody who always completes those for us. It is what we can then take back to our funders to say, here is what you helped us with and where we're going with that. So thank you for everybody that completes those. Throughout today's session, Tori will be dropping the survey link as well as the PowerPoint presentation in there. So if you'll take a minute to complete that survey. We do also on our survey, before I move on, we do have a line that says if you put your address or phone number on there, we mail out free marketing materials for just a thank you for completion of that. So that's why we ask for your address to just mail you materials. Canvas is where we store everything, where we store recommendations, where we store the videos, PowerPoints, information that is shared with us during these sessions. So if you would like access to our Canvas page, please just email us at autismecho@aggies.usu.edu, and we will get you set up for our Canvas page. Again, just another plug for that case study. I love when I get the opportunity to present one of the cases of families that I'm working with, because like I said, you guys are just have so many resources and information on this call. It gives me those great ideas. I'm presenting the case for a fellow coworker today. So if that is something that is more comfortable in having us present that for you, please just reach out to us. Like I said, it's just you get so much feedback that you can take back and apply. And all of those recommendations are then stored on our Canvas page. So if you have a client that you're like, ooh, that question is something I'm struggling with a family that I'm working with, go back and use those resources and recommendations. Again, everybody on this call has such great information and knowledge that, and we don't always get together and know where we can find those. So a great way to do that. We do have social media, so if you've not followed us on social media, go ahead and take a minute and do that. We just post resources. We post information about our sessions, upcoming things that are shared with us, and any news with that. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn the time over to Justin Benson, who is a speech language pathologist and one of our hub members, and he's going to be talking to us today.
All right, just getting my screen up here. Okay, yes, like Janelle was saying, my name is Justin Benson. I'm a speech pathologist in Vernal, Utah. I work for the Uinta School District out here. I've also worked in an outpatient setting at the hospital, outpatient and inpatient. I've done private practice as well as early intervention. So I've being in a small town, I've had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of different things. And autism has become one of my focuses that I've really enjoyed researching and working with students and children on the autism spectrum disorder. Um, there we go. So some of the resources that I'll be pulling a lot from for this presentation are the Autism Workbook by Laura Mize. Mostly working, this is ideas for working with toddlers and preschoolers with red flags for autism. I also really like the manual "It Takes Two to Talk" from Hannon. I've gone to two different trainings for this same workshop, and there's a lot of really great information on the from this resource. I also really have liked the CERTS model. Sorry, we've got a little construction going on in our basement. I don't know if you can hear any of the drilling or anything going on, but I apologize. But the CERTS model, the CERTS stands for Social Communication, Emotional Regulation, and Transactional Support. This was created by two different SLPs and an occupational therapist and some other individuals. The main author for the CERTS program is Barry Prezant. He is an SLP on the East Coast, and he wrote a book called Uniquely Human, and he and a partner of his, they have the Uniquely Human podcast. You can find it on Spotify. And that I've pulled a lot of really great information from his stuff that has really shaped my therapy. So there's some really good stuff from Barry Prezant and the CERTS model. Just a quick overview of the criteria for autism for the DSM-5, specifically the areas that touch on communication. So the first criteria that we look at is persistent deficits in social communication and social interactions across multiple contexts, as manifested by the following: deficits in social emotional reciprocity, that back and forth communication, deficits in nonverbal communication behavior used for social interaction, like gestures and picking up on different social cues, deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. And then the second point is restricted and repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. So stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech, so that you'd see echolalia. That's where you'd see echolalia. Insistence on sameness and flexible adherence to routines or ritualized patterns of behavior, nonverbal behavior. Highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. And I've seen a lot of students, especially at the middle school, who enjoy playing Minecraft. And I have learned all sorts of things about Minecraft the last couple of years. And then hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input or unusual interests in sensory aspects of the environment. And that sensory piece is also important. We want to make sure our students are regulated, or our children are regulated, before we can start working on communication. I really love this quote by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He says, treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them to become what they are capable of becoming. And so if I see a student who has all these behavior issues and only see them as a behavior student, that's all they're going to be in my eyes, right? But if I treat them as if they were what they could be, treat them for their potential, then they can make those gains. Um, and maybe how I view them, like they're different in my eyes, but they we can help support that development as we believe in their potential. Okay, so this picture here is a picture that one of my professors showed us in class, one of the first days. So this is Fred Astaire and his sister dancing in the bandwagon, and you can see that they're both doing the same thing. They've got the same hand actions. He's watching her very intently. The only difference here is his right foot is angled in where hers is angled out. So he's watching her intently. And then almost as if, like, if we think about this from a therapeutic standpoint, we're watching our students, we're seeing what they can do, and then we adjust it just a little bit to show them where they can go from where they're currently at. Dr. Jane Hilton, my professor, she reminded us that there is no best treatment. Every child has unique needs. The treatment is most effective when tailored to meet the person's unique profile, their communication profile, their social emotional profile, how they are developmentally. We meet them where they're at, right? And then educational and treatment decisions should be team decisions um, with parents as team members. And we can see that in any setting. In early intervention, we're always including parents in the IFSP. In the school setting, we want to make sure the parents are involved in the IEP process. And anywhere we're at, the parents are the professionals for their child. And so we value their input. And in terms of no best treatment, when I left grad school, I still prefer the floor time model, the DIR floor time model. And when I left grad school, I was like anti-ABA. No, thank you. I don't want anything to do with it. But then I started working with BCBAs and learning a little bit more about ABA and talking with parents of kids on the spectrum who are thriving in ABA as well as thriving in other types of therapy. So whatever is best for the student or the child, that's where we focus. So from the Laura Mize's Autism Workbook manual, there are several things that she focuses on that I'll touch on in this presentation. So foundational strategies to address communication in autism spectrum disorders. This is one of my favorite things I learned about in grad school. It's the zone of proximal development. So this circle here in the middle is what the student or the child can do on their own. This is what they've mastered. And then this outer circle is what we would expect a student to be doing based off of how old they are, based off of developmental norms. So we know that students that we'll be working with, they're not able to achieve what is developmentally appropriate. This is where we're at with their level of development. And so with our support, they are able to achieve this middle circle here, which is the zone of proximal development. That's what they can do with our support. So where do we start? Meeting a child where they're at. Of course, we have our standardized norm reference assessments. In early intervention, we've got the Battelle. Here in Utah specifically, all early intervention facilities are required to use the Battelle Developmental Inventory. We have the preschool language skills, which I like for older, my older young kids. It goes up to 7 years old. I don't love it for early intervention, but I do like it for that preschool kindergarten age range. We have the clinical evaluation of language fundamentals. There's the preschool edition, but then there's also the fifth edition that goes up to older ages. And then there's many more. At the school district here, we use the oral and written language skills. There's all sorts of standardized tests that we can use. And that's just to get us an overview of how they're doing developmentally and how they compare to other students their age. But it is important to dig a little deeper. So there's developmental checklists that we can use, such as the Rossetti Infant Toddler Language Scale. It is a standardized checklist. However, it is criterion based, so it's based off of what we'd expect to see developmentally versus norm based. So it's not based off of a population of other students of similar age. And that's for early intervention. We've got the Leah Curtin Speech and Language Milestone. All of these are hyperlinked to either where you can purchase the resource or where you can get a free copy of these resources. Laura Mize has a lot of really great information for early intervention, and I really like her 11 skills that toddlers master before words emerge. Hannon Center's It Takes Two to Talk. They have I've got to get rid of this here real quick. It Takes Two to Talk, the stages of communication development. DIR Floor Time has a checklist, and they have different areas where you can determine where a student is developmentally. CERTS also has communication stages. And then a new resource that I found recently, it's not necessarily a checklist, but it's the developmental assessment of social emotional learning. It was created by the Speech Dude, and it looks at a lot of social emotional learning, but also self-advocacy, where they are communication wise. It's just a questionnaire that you send out to the teachers. You can send it to the parents, and then you can also do an observational questionnaire as well. And what I really like about that is it asks specifically what the students or the child's strengths are, and then it asks what the parents are concerned about or what concerns the teachers are seeing in the classroom. And so we can really tailor our goals based off of skills, but also where the major areas of concern are. So where do we start in therapy? We start with what the child has mastered. So what I've learned in ABA is pairing is what they do at the onset of therapy, and pairing is just building relationships, doing what the child likes to do in order to build that relationship, build that rapport with the student, so that they can have that confidence not only in themselves and their current level of communication, but also build confidence in us as providers as we are helping facilitate their growth and their development in language and communication. Laura, yeah.
Before you get too far in, where do we start therapy? Can you answer this question that is in chat? It says, is the ASQSE too helpful, and do you use the ASQs?
I know, Stacy, maybe you use the ASQ for Help Me Grow, right? The Ages and Stages questionnaire.
Yes, we do. We do both the ASQ3 for developmental and then the ASQ, excuse me, SE for social emotional. And then we also use the MChat.
Mm-hmm. At the preschool here in the UNS school district, we send out an ASQ for all of our students who are wanting testing, and that has been helpful to get a good baseline of what areas we need to test in. So yeah, we do use that in the school district as well. Thank you for that question. Okay, so where do we start? We start with what the child has mastered, where their strengths are. Like I said, it helps build that confidence in themselves and also us as providers. This quote by Laura Mize I really like. Always remember that relationships and fun, loving connections are the foundation for learning to communicate. In fact, building relationships is why we learn to communicate. When we have that relationship with the students, they want to interact with us. They want to talk to us. And so it's important to start there. From the Hannon It Takes Two to Talk, they have this acronym: observe, wait, and listen. So this is just what I I have tried to incorporate in all of my practice, not just in early intervention, but in the elementary schools as well, and also the middle schools that I've been working in. So working with the student, observing them, waiting to see what they bring up and waiting to see what they want to communicate with me and listening to what they want to communicate and then building on that. It's a lot more successful than me bringing in my toys or my therapy material and saying, this is what I want you to say. It's not as motivating for these students because they want to use words that they're already talking about with you, and they'll show you what they want to talk about through gestures and toys that they want to play with or things that they gravitate towards naturally. Focus 2 is introducing social games. These are, I enjoy doing this, especially with younger kids, with the early intervention and preschool kids. So the benefits that we have from social games and routines are we're meeting a child's sensory needs. We're providing a framework or a structure or a better way to teach and then practice a new skill. We give a child a chance to learn to do his part while having fun. And his part is the communication, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then help a child with autism become purposefully verbal, and then building compliance and group participation and facilitate peer interaction. Hannon has another acronym, SPARK. So when we're looking at routines and when we're incorporating routines or social games into a student's life or in therapy, we use SPARK. So we start the same way each time. We plan the child's turn. We adjust the routine so our child can take their turn, and then we repeat the same actions, sounds, words each time. That should say each time. I need to fix that. And then we keep the end the same. So if we are looking at patty cake, for example, we're obviously saying the same words each time. We're planning the child's turn. So I like to throw it in the oven for baby and me. That's when I want my student to engage in this routine. And so I adjust the routine so that they'll take their turn. So pat it and roll it and mark it with the B, and then I give them an expectant look. I wait, I count, and I have to count to 5 or 10 seconds in my head and not say anything at all, because I tend to just rush in and try and get them to, I grab their hands and make them do the action. So I have to hold myself back to see what the student will do. And they need that 5 to 10 seconds to process and this is after we've already established the routine, but they need that 5 to 10 seconds to process what's going on and then figure out how to do it themselves. And then they let the word out, or they let a sound out, or they do a gesture or something like that, and then keep the end the same. Throw it in the oven for baby and me, and then I'll tickle my babies or like my kids or something when I do that, or have the parents tickle their babies, or make it fun. Just make a fun interaction that way. So some of my favorite routines, Ready, Set, Go is a classic. How we adjust that routine is we pause before so again, we set up the routine, ready, set, go, and then we run across the yard or something like that. And if we want the student to say go, then we pause right before we say go, count to 5 to 10 seconds in our heads, and then see what they initiate. 3, 2, 1 blast off is fun. I'll do that with my 17-month-old. I'll hold him and I kind of shake him a little bit. 3, 2, 1. And then I wait and I look at him expectantly, and he gets this big smile on his face, and I go, blast off. So that smile is my first level of communication that I want to see from my child, my own son. And that's telling me that he's communicating with me because he's having fun. We're building that relationship. And then all of a sudden, a smile is no longer good enough. So I do a 3, 2, 1, and then he smiles, and I wait 5 seconds more, and then he goes, ah, or he'll jump, or his body will move, or give me some kind of gesture that's not full on words, but it's still a level, it's alternative communication that we will count. I count it. I say, yeah, blast off. And then I model the blast off for him until eventually, hopefully, all his squeals and things will turn into a blast off. That's what happened with my other son, Rogan. When he was younger, about the same age, I'd do a sleep wake up thing. And I would hold him in my lap and I go, Rogan, sleep. And I'd fall asleep. And then he'd like touch my face. And that's my first level of communication. I know he wants to do something with me, but he doesn't have the words, he doesn't have the skills to be able to say, wake up. And so he touches my face and I go, wake up. And I startle him and he starts busting up laughing and thinks it's so funny. And then I go, sleep. And I fall back asleep again. And then he touches my face and it's no longer good enough. It's not going to wake me up anymore. So then he goes, like, wake up. Okay, here we go. And then eventually that squeal turned into a gah, like, yeah, wake up. Good job, dude. That's awesome. And now he talks a lot. He talks to everybody, and it's awesome. One of my favorite things to use in therapy is books. And especially starting out, I like to try and make books as interactive as possible. So with my 17-month-old, I've introduced Good Night Moon, Good Night Room, Good Night House. You know what I'm talking about? Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Good Night Moon, for sure was what it's called. But then every piece that we talk about, I try to make it interactive. So, and I get his little finger and I point to the different pictures on the pages.
And
so,
Preston,
yes.
You have another question. Would you practice these games a bit to set the routine before adding the anticipatory look? If you've never done that before.
Yeah, we have to establish the routine first. We practice it. Ready, set, go. And then we run across the room, or we swing them around in a circle, or we do things like 3, 2, 1, blast off, throw them up in the air. Yes, we definitely practice those. We definitely want to practice those, establish the routine first, and then we sabotage is one of the strategies to try and get the child to engage in the routine with you. So yes, establish the routine first. Any other questions? Does that answer the question? Let me pull up here. Okay, so books. So Goodnight Moon. I get my son's little finger and I had him point to all the different things. The cow moo jumps over the moon. Oh, goodnight clocks. And he's starting to incorporate some of these little sounds in it. So I establish the routine. I teach him how to make those different sounds. And then once we've read the book a few nights in a row, then I pause. Oh, night clocks. I wait for him. And then he started saying, and good night, little mouse. And he's starting to make these little sounds. And it's just fun. And then once they give you some level of communication, we consider their zone of proximal development, figure out where they can go beyond that, and then model what it can be. So for my son who's doing tick tock, then I model tick tock. And then I'll say, the clock says tick tock. And so we're gradually building onto our students' language that way. One of my favorite experiences that I had was at the preschool with a student. I'm just going to say his name is Tiny because, and he wasn't tiny. And at 3 years old, he was probably the size of a kindergartner. But he was playing with his preschool teacher, and this kid was so hard to engage with. One of those students where, and I don't know if any of you have had this experience as well, but they'll be playing with something and I try to come in and play with them and then they just take off. And I can't follow the kid's lead because they don't want anything to do with me. And so there was this moment where the student had this little play routine that he was doing with his teacher, and he'd get a little toy dinosaur and a little toy tree, and the dinosaur would eat the leaves on the tree. And he was just doing that over and over and over again. And so his teacher, Miss Libby, she would go, and that was it. That was the whole routine. And they kept doing it over and over and over again. And so and then I stopped Miss Libby. I said, Miss Libby, I want you to pause before you say, And so he goes, he doesn't say this. The teacher's saying, while he's playing with the toy. And then she stops and he's sitting there waiting. And then finally he looks up at his teacher, touches her mouth, and he says, like, okay, all right, we're decreasing the scaffolding a little bit. We're decreasing our supports to encourage that communication. And then we're able to build on from there. Just some other verbal games. The Carpenter's Hammer from Kinder Music's really fun. Wheels on the Bus, Itsy Bitsy Spider, Patty Cake. And then for my older kids, yes, I'm focusing a lot on early intervention in preschool. But the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to work at the middle school, working with one student with autism spectrum disorder. He's fully verbal, and he's definitely verbal. He's one where the conversations are often one-sided and they are all about Minecraft. And so 2 years ago, I was trying to figure out, okay, how the heck can we use Minecraft to um, uh, make this more therapeutic, to build our social skills? And listening to Barry Prezant, he has like a weekly an enthusiasm of the week is what he calls it. So rather than calling them hyperfixations or anything like that, he calls them an enthusiasm because we want to see them as a strength, the things that these kids on the spectrum are doing. And so his enthusiasm was Minecraft. And so I said, hey, for privacy, we'll call him Mikey. Mikey, um, what if we have a Minecraft club next year and you are the president of the Minecraft club? And um, we worked on it. I said, we came up with, I did the Dassel with him. And there's a questionnaire for the older students as well. And you ask them, what do you want to do in speech therapy? And he said, I really want to learn how to negotiate. I was like, oh, great. Okay, how are we going to do this in speech? And so I used Minecraft. And I said, okay, we're going to negotiate with the principal. We're going to negotiate and figure out how we can convince the principal to let us have a Minecraft club. And it was just a mock thing. We didn't do it. We didn't do it for real, but he came up with some points. We were able to structure what he was saying so that he can come up with some valid points for why we should have a Minecraft club. And so this last school year, we had a Minecraft club, and they came every week and they would interact with each other. And it was an opportunity for him to um, be included with peers who, neurotypical peers and neurodivergent peers. And there were some really, really great interactions that he had with the other students. There was one time where, and I know nothing about Minecraft, and these kids are so smart and they're able to do all these cheats and all these different coding things that I have no idea what they're doing. Anyway, we're in the computer lab and Mikey is at one computer and a peer of his is at a different computer on the row behind him. And all of these kids are on a team against this one peer that's sitting behind him. And he's throwing in all these cheats. And Mikey, who, that we're very rigid, we're a rule follower, and he's telling the student, hey, you're cheating. You can't do that. Anyway, he's still doing all these cheats. And then there's this full-on battle. And I'm watching the peers and this other sped teacher is watching Mikey's computer. And it's just this really intense moment, and they're getting closer and closer to each other. And finally, Mikey just dominates. Despite all the cheats, he's able to beat this kid, and the whole class just erupted and was cheering for this kid. And it was just a really cool moment for Mikey to be included with his peers in a shared enthusiasm. So it was just a fun experience for that. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so developing joint attention and turn taking. Joint attention is a child's ability to include you and share experiences with you. Real quick, I need to go back to Mikey for a second. Just when I first met him, he was taking over the conversation, talking specifically about Minecraft, and I'd have to stop him and say, okay, let's work on something else. But then we did this club and we worked on skills that he could incorporate in the club. And then by the end of the year, this school year, he's going into high school next year. He was talking to me about some experiences that he had in the classroom where there were other students. There was another student that was bothering him. And he was able to self-advocate. He was able to talk to the teacher and say, hey, the student is bothering me. Can I be moved to a different spot? So he found another solution. He was able to learn self-advocacy skills, and then it got to the point at the end of the year where I came to pull him out of class, and he's like, I don't want to go. I'm like, all right, sweet. You're learning some really great skills. You want to be in the classroom. Stay in the classroom. So I'm really proud of what he was able to accomplish through all of this. Okay, developing joint attention and turn taking. So joint attention, their ability to include you and share experiences with you. And then turn taking, a child participates in back and forth exchanges with you during play routines or other interactions. So we've talked about this with the social routines. We've established the social routines, and then we encourage the turn taking. We encourage joint attention. A lot of what I learned about joint attention is they look at the toy and then they look at you and then they look back at the toy. I don't personally hyper focus on having the child give me good eye contact. If they're still engaging with me without eye contact, I take that as a win. And then we target play skills. I love these quotes from Mr. Rogers. Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. Play gives children a chance to practice what they are learning. They have to play with what they know to be true in order to find out more. And then they can use what they learn in new forms of play. So I do a little bit of work at the hospital over the summer, and I was working with a new mom or a mom of a 2-year-old just this last Monday. And she said, "Oh, we tried an early intervention, but all they did was come in and play. And so we stopped early intervention." And I said, "Well, let me tell you the awesome things about play and why play is important." There's this really great research article that I read by Carol Westby. She has the Carol, she's created a symbolic play scale. And reading through this research article that she wrote, and I think I have the resource at the end of the slides, but she talks about how the development of language is tied hand in hand with the development of play. And so we are building an awareness of the object. We're building an awareness that an object exists when not seen. So we have object permanence there, and then we have purposeful exploration of toys at around 13 to 17 months, and that's when we start seeing our first words. And then auto-symbolic play, that's it's using an object for its purpose. So if you have a toy cup, you're using it as a cup. And then symbolic play extends beyond the child's self. Around 24 months represents daily experience, and then we're starting to combine toys in play, and that's when we're starting to combine words in play. And then we go into play with sequences, and then we use previous stages in more imaginative ways. And then planning and sequencing plans a sequence of pretend events and full cooperative play with other kids. My oldest daughter, she'll take what she learns from school, and then she'll come back home and do pretend play with things that she's learned from school. So in second grade, I was out back and she came home and she and her brother were playing the War of 1812. And for Halloween this last year, they were learning about American tall tales, and she wanted to be Pecos Bill for Halloween, because why not? And her brother was Paul Bunyan. And so she's incorporating what she's learning in school and play, and it's solidifying what she is learning in school. Emphasizing receptive language. This is a very important one, and it's often one that I skip over because I want the kid to talk. But as understanding early words and following simple directions is important for language development, because a child must understand words before he can use those words to communicate. So where do we start? With nouns, following the child's lead. We're labeling and talking about what they are interacting with. And then verbs and prepositions, following the child's lead always, and then labeling and talking about what they are doing. What I will tell my early intervention parents is figure out a daily routine, because in daily routines, they're experiencing the language that you're going to be modeling for them. And then once they've established those routines, for example, washing your hands, I'll tell parents, give them a direction for each step of the routine, so that we're learning how to follow directions, but we're also learning vocabulary, and we're also experiencing the language. For example, let's go wash our hands. Okay, turn on the water, and then wait, see what they do. And if they don't turn on the water, then you can grab their little hands and help them do hand over hand cueing to help them turn on the water. And then, okay, get your hands wet. So you're giving them that direction. Okay, get some soap, rub, rub, rub. Okay, rinse, 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 dry, dry, dry. And my little 17-month-old, when we're done washing hands, he goes to the towels now and he goes, da, 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 da. So he's learning how to say the word dry, and then I model dry, dry, dry for him. Of course, we have our kids on the spectrum who don't like that hand over hand cueing. And so still providing this language model for them is going to be important in their language development. Academic language for early intervention, I don't focus a whole lot on that, like colors and numbers and shapes and things like that. I know a lot of parents it's really exciting when these kids learn their colors at 2 years old. It's amazing. But I always try to encourage parents like, yes, that's awesome. Let them learn the colors. Let them learn the numbers and the alphabet or whatever. But also add another word to it. So if you're going to learn red, yeah, red apple. That apple is red. And then we're building on what they already know, right? Okay, teaching imitation. So this is the steps to building verbal imitation. We start with actions with objects, and then communicative gestures. And then for those two steps, oh shoot, it's 16 gestures by 16 months. I just looked it up this morning, and the First Words Project. They have 16 gestures by 16 months. They've got 16 actions with objects by 16 months, and then there's a few other
Autism
resources.
Navigator.
Uh-huh.
That's where you'll find those lookbooks at.
Okay. Yeah, Autism Navigator has a ton of resources on there as well for all sorts of different skills that you're trying to develop with your child. Okay, so for imitation, thanks, Janelle. For imitation, just a couple of examples. We had when I was working with Primetime for Kids for early intervention, we were doing a home visit and we were playing outside. And what this kid liked to do was take his car and he just drove it on the outside of the house, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And anytime I tried to like interact with him specifically, he just took off and didn't want anything to do with me. And then what I did is I got a car and I started going back and forth on the house with him. I didn't stay by him, but I was near him so he could see what I was doing. And then he'd look at me like, "What are you doing?" So I looked at what he was doing. I started with where he was at, and then I changed it. And I started driving the car up and down on the house. Then he looked up at me, and then he looked at his car, and then he drove his car up and down on the house. I was like, yes. And then I took my car and I jumped it over from the house and I landed it on the pillar on their porch and I started driving up and down on the pillar. And then the student, he took his car and he jumped it over and he got halfway and he's like, yeah, no, I think I'm good. And he went back to his house and he went back and forth on the house. But I took it as a win because it was different than this little thing that he was hyper focusing on, his little enthusiasm. I was shifting my foot just a little bit so that he could see where he could go with what he liked to do. And then walking in the hall. So this is with Tiny. He liked to walk backwards in the hall. So I'd grab his hand and I would walk backwards with him. And then I turned around and I started stomping my feet. And then he turned around and started stomping his feet. And then I'd jump and he'd jump. And it was just this cool imitation of gestures that we were able to build on. And then the flat ball, it's one of those balls that you squish and it suction cups together. And then it'll pop up after a few seconds. And so we'll do like a wait, and then it'll pop and then we make a big deal out of it. And sometimes I'll put a toy on top of it, like a frog, and we'll say frog, 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 frog until it pops up. That's fun. And then so yeah, teaching imitation. We start off with actions, we start off with gestures, and then we can build up to imitation of words and then phrases, and then we can build up to communication. Expanding expressive language. There's 25 speech and language strategies. These are just different strategies that we can use from Leah Curtin. Here's a link to her website. You might actually just need to go to this free download here at the bottom to get that. But there's a lot of different, there's 25 different strategies that we can use to teach parents to give them tools to work on communication development at home. Okay, Gestalt language processing. This is a lot of neurotypical students or children. They are analytical language learners. So they start off with one word at a time and then they build on that. So we have this girl here with her dad and she starts off with park and then she says play park and then she's able to build up from there and say let's go to the park. Well, our Gestalt language processors, they start with whole chunks of phrases first. So let's get ready to rumble. This is our echolalia. It's something maybe he heard on a game or on TV or something like that. So then what we do with Gestalts is we take them apart a little bit at a time. We observe, wait, and listen. We follow their lead. We take what they're saying, and then we change it slightly so that we can have more functional language. So he says, let's get ready to rumble. And then we can use that let's get ready as a carrier phrase to get them to say something different. Let's get ready to eat. And then we've shortened that carrier phrase to let's get, and we have let's get going to the park. Um, one of my students who I supervise the technician who works with the student. So I don't personally work with the student, but I do know the family really well. He for a couple of years ago he loved Mario, and he assigned Mario characters to all of his family. Um, he was Mario, of course. His oldest brother, who's his best friend, was Luigi. His mom was Princess Peach, and his dad was Bowser. And so he'd come home from school and he'd say, Princess Peach, have you found the Power Star? And that meant, Mom, can I have a cookie? And I don't know how the mom was able to figure that out, but we can take that phrase and use it as a carrier. We can shorten it to use a carrier phrase to get him to say, Mom, have you found a cookie? Or we can even keep Princess Peach in there. Princess Peach, can I have or have you found a cookie? And then have you made the cookies? Things like that. Other focus areas, experimenting with AAC. So we already have talked about a lot of alternative communication, which is going to be our gestures. It's going to be facial expressions. We can use signs. That's a form of AAC. That's all no-tech AAC. PEX is going to be, picture exchange system is going to be a low-tech form of communication. And then we have our high-tech communication with iPads, and there's Proloquo2Go. We've got LAMP. In our school district, we use Cough Drop, which is really awesome. I've enjoyed using Cough Drop. We have been able to partner with UAT of Utah, the Utah Assistive Technology team, to get grants for licenses for students. And then once the student has a license, then we can become like a mentor for their license. So we can get on and log into their license, and we can adjust the board and change it. I don't do a ton of that kind of AAC. We have a UAT team for our district, and I utilize them to help build those boards for those students. I do really enjoy, I don't know if any of you know about Story Champs, but Story Champs has an AAC version that we got recently with a grant. And with a couple of my middle schoolers in the life skills classroom, I'll show him Cough Drop. Two of my students, actually, what they like to do is they push all the buttons. He's got autism, and he stems on this, and he pushes all the buttons, and he has the voice play, and he really enjoys listening to the guy read all the words rapidly. And so I'll say, okay, hold on, let's tell our story first, and we'll just do one word at a time for each story grammar element. And he's catching on. He figures out where the nouns are and the verbs are and all the things. And then once we've finished our task that we're working on, as a little reward, I'll let him go crazy. I'll tell him, okay, go crazy. And he taps all the buttons and he listens to it, and he enjoys listening to that. So I let him. And then helping a nonverbal child find their voice, facilitate peer interactions. These are more things that you can learn about in the Laura Mize handbook. And she's got all sorts of resources on her website that you can go to. These are my sources that I have for my presentation. This one down here at the bottom, the Carol Westby Assessment of Cognitive and Language Abilities Through Play. That I feel like was a game changer for me when I read that resource and saw the importance of play and language development. But that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for letting me present today. Any questions at all?
So we will open it up for a few minutes for questions if anybody has any.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I love doing speech. I think communication is such an important thing, and I love that we have this resource here with the Echo team because I was talking to one of the physical therapists, and we were talking about how communication is such an important skill. It's kind of an all hands on deck approach. All the help that we can get from any professional, any interprofessional practice that we can incorporate to help these students is key. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for letting me present.
Thank you, Justin. It's always great. So, like I said, I get to be the one who is sharing the case presentation today, and I am presenting it for a coworker. So we just wrote out some of these things. It's not usually in a Word document, but so this is the Martinez family, and they live in Logan, Utah. The family is two parents, Elena and Marco. And their three children. So Sophia, who's 5, Mateo, who is 3, and Lucas, who is 20 months old. Elena, mom, is a part-time nurse, and dad works as a software developer. They are a bilingual household, speaking both English and Spanish. They are a close-knit family and value spending time together outdoors with extended families. So Sophia attends kindergarten. Mateo is in a local preschool, and then Lucas is the youngest, and he's cared for at home by Elena and occasionally the grandparents. Lucas is the one who is in the early intervention Part C program. Some of the concerns that they have about Lucas is that mom and dad have both noticed some developmental differences in Lucas compared to his older siblings at the same age. But when they brought this up during their healthcare screening checkup, their doctor said that there's no immediate concerns about autism or just development in general. So he didn't immediately get referred to Part C early intervention, just suggesting that Lucas may be simply developing at his own pace. Mom and dad were still really concerned about Lucas's behavior, so they started observing several behaviors that align with early signs of autism. Their neighbor is who really started talking to them about autism, as well as the Part C early intervention program. So parents called and did the evaluation. These were some of the indicators that as parents did the initial evaluation, some of the things that they had noticed. So in social communication and interaction, they noticed that he's not making eye contact, he's not responding to his name, he has very limited social games like peekaboo, he doesn't point to show interest or share attention, and they thought he had facial expressions, but he's not imitating them, so sticking out his tongue or making different funny faces. He's not using, he has very few spoken words. I think that parents said that he has 1 or 2. He's not babbling, but he does do that echolalia, or that Gestalt learning that Justin was just talking about. So his favorite one is, do you want to drink? Do you want to drink? Do you want to drink? He really engages in repetitive movements. Mom calls that happy flapping and calm spinning, because he does that when he is watching TV. He really does have a strong preference for lining up the toys. He reacts to certain sounds. He hates the vacuum cleaner, and then when mom wears two certain shirts, he hates those, and is also pretty pain. He has a high tolerance of pain, meaning he doesn't ever feel hurt. He has gotten burned on their stove before. So, with their doctor, while the doctor is not concerned, they really want to advocate to get in more evaluations. Up here in northern Utah, we have a great program called the CERT program that is for kids 3 to 5. We had Dr. Higbee speak to us last month about ABA, so his program, but you do need to have a diagnosis of that. They are asking they did ask their doctor. Sorry, someone just came into my office, and so it distracted me for a minute. They did ask their doctor to do a formal screening, and he declined to do that. So they are considering to make a referral to a developmental pediatrician. So a few of the questions, and so if you go into my breakout group, we are going to talk about what are some ways the Martinez family can support Luca's development at home while waiting for that formal diagnosis. Colin, your group is going to take how might the cultural and linguistic factors influence the identification and support of the developmental delays in bilingual households. And then Stacy, your group is going to talk about what are some strategies that the families use to advocate for their child's need when their concerns are not initially shared by the healthcare provider. I think that all of us have probably experienced this at one time in our career, and how do we navigate that with pediatricians and families? I see Colin shaking his head that it's still so discouraging, and it is. So if you guys want, Leo, if you'll put us in breakout groups, and we'll go in to have those discussions. Do we have
two more people, but they should be coming in.
Okay. Well, I know our group had some really good discussions, but Colin, do you guys want to start with your one idea from your group?
Yeah, so we got tasked with question 2, which was cultural or linguistic factors. Well, that's something that certainly could come into play. I think we all kind of settled on that this pediatrician needs to do a screener as which is part of the guidelines. That whether it's the MCHET or the POSI, they've already neglected to do that, which is against the guidelines. Starting at 16 months, they should be doing that. So there are online resources for them to do that for themselves. And so, yeah, I don't want to just drag the pediatrician for that.
So we'll just stop there. But there could be some of those cultural linguistic factors. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in our group too. Stacy, how about your group?
Yeah, we talked a lot about the pediatrician too. And just kind of the main suggestion is just making sure that pediatrician is the right fit, and really just learning to advocate. Obviously, we also talked a little bit about the culture and being very respectful to, somebody in a pediatrician role or a physician role, and how hard that could be to advocate. So we did have quite a list of ideas. Another was to really focus on connecting with the parents and the parent groups that they are already a part of, and asking, what are you doing, or what suggestions do you have? Do you, just collaborating and using that village that they already have in place to help them.
Yeah, that's a great one to do. One day before I retire, I hope that, and it might be forever that I retire, but that I hope that we are not still saying the pediatrician took a wait and see approach. But that is my ultimate goal for everything. So we had the question, or what are some ways that they could support his development at home? Such great suggestions and conversations that we had. A few of them that we talked about is sharing some resources that Justin shared during the session. The other one is talking about TBRI, so trauma-based, what? Help me, Cami, what's it called?
Trauma-based relational intervention.
There you go. And what was also really cool is we had two parents' perspective from ours, and so they could relate to this question and this child. So we are at time, so I don't want to ever keep anybody over their time. We are taking a break for this Autism Echo in July, but we'll be starting back up in August. And so that makes the date August 27th. That's painful for me to say because that means then summer's over and I love summer. So, but August 27th, you can register right now for the new series. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and we'll talk to you soon.